Alright, hell yeah. Cool, so we're gonna talk about some R1 rafting. Someone had a question, what's my cardio level on a 1 to 10? I would say it's a 7. Let's just stick with 7. I think it might be an 8. When I'm practicing R1ing, how many holes or swims can I make before I'm too tired? Now that's a subjective question, because it comes down to safety of, like, you know what I mean, just being tired. You're not going to die if you're just floating with a life jacket in a class 1 environment. And so a lot of the features that I try to go big on, might have like class 1 swims. And I bring up the point of just going to a surf wave, having that flip me, and just having a class 1 swim. And even there, I mean, it's intense because you're getting more and more tired. But in those situations, like, my head is never going underwater. I think that's the real risk. And if you've never swam a rapid, every wave is going to make you go underwater. And I think even in a raft safety speech, we kind of just glance over that. Hey, that happens. But no one says that it sucks. Like, you're going to feel like you're drowning. Every time I've flipped out of my boat and haven't caught myself, and I'm going like underneath the boat and just not popping up for a couple seconds, my body thinks it's going to die. I think I'm going to die every single time. I think something bizarre is going to happen, where I get caught up in something. And that's a difficult one to keep perspective on. And so if you're swimming in a rapid, every wave is going to send you under. And I think I'm okay with hitting a wave and going under and knowing that I'm going to resurface. But in rivers, there's features. The two major features are holes where you can, you kind of want to go hella deep and then kind of pop up. But you can go under for over 3 seconds, and it can be up to 30. You know what I mean? 7 to 10 can be very traditional on drop pool rivers out in the east, just because they have such flat gradients behind features. And so if you go under, you're just in this, you're kind of traveling through a laminar tunnel of water where everything else is, like not moving or something. And you get a lot of seams. So holes, and then where the current meets the eddy. Like, those are, you have this action, but you also have, you have downward flow. So you can just hit the bottom of the river right on those seams. And I think it's those that are the spookiest. Just knowing that, hey, I'm going under and I'm in something weird. Even just the other week, I was just swimming to shore, and there was current up against shore, but then right up against shore you have, because of laminar flow, you have stationary flow on the surface of the shore where the rocks are, but then you have a lot of current. And just trying to cross that just a little bit was sending me under. And then the second you go under on the seam, then you're just like, well, how long am I going to be down? I might be caught kind of in a, same thing in a hole getting recirculated this way. If you go into something where you have diving current, and I got a good recommendation, or just guy in the Locksaw. He was in a full wetsuit, and he's like, yeah, I'm swimming this today. No life jacket. And so I wanted to pick his brain. I just asked, hey, those currents that send you, because he was talking about doing mystery moves just with his body. And it was really good advice, because he said, well, don't fight it. If you're going down, that water is sending you down. You would waste all your energy trying to fight it. Does that make sense? But he said you can go sideways. Just like you're in the current going down the river this way, and you want to get out of that current, you can move laterally to catch an eddy. You know, and you would do so in the same way. Like if you don't catch it strong, you're just going to be spinning right there. But if you actually do a good job moving laterally, you can catch those. So if you're in a down well, and you can spatially recognize where the hell you are, and there is a potential that you could move laterally. I think typically the name of the game is just let the current do what you're going to do, and as long as you're not going to get entrapped in any underwater sieves, I think, you know what I mean, even if you're in that 30-second game, I would imagine you just want to go with it until you can fully recognize that you're surfacing. Alright, hell yeah, let's click it again. Alright, booyah. So I just want to go through, I guess the last question was, do you think having good cardio for R1 rafting is needed to paddle safely? And I guess just in my comment, and I'm just doing a video comment on this one. Anyway, I would just say R1 is different than kayaking. Kayaking the question is, can you roll up in any feature? You know what I mean? If you're going through that rapid and you tip over in every little feature, are you able to roll yourself back up? R1 rafting, I would just say, is just like, can you swim that rapid, and are you going to take that risk, and can you swim it? You know, back to that, you know, getting thrown around in a rapid and getting submerged, timing your breath, it's very difficult. Even just in a normal class 3 wave train where every wave is hitting you in the face and you have to hold your breath, pop up, take a breath, hold your breath. Like, I had to do that on the Locksaw through a pretty decent rapid, and I even think I was holding on to the boat and it still sucked. You know what I mean? That's awful. Anyway, yeah, I don't know how you don't think that you're going to drown. I mean, because flush drowning is just that. You're getting just worked. Every wave is hitting you. You might get subbed, pop up, and you're just not able to. You get exhausted, panicked, and you can't time your breath, and you can't take a breath, and every time you go under, you feel like you're going to drown, and one of those does drown you. In a panic situation, it doesn't take more than 3 seconds underwater. That's what I'm thinking, is because there was a ton of flush drowning scenarios, you know, where some people just get hella worked, hella tired, can't get out of the river, go through the next rapid probably, and you just flush drown. So in one of those going under, you know, your breath isn't timed, panic, and I'm sure within 3 seconds, you know what I mean, you're just like, I'm done. Compared to like in a controlled environment, trying to hold your breath in practice, you might be able to do it. I did it for 3 minutes, but you know what I mean? 10 seconds feels like, nah, this is it. Sometimes 3 to 5 is just like, no, I feel like I'm going to die. And yeah, so it's just interesting. Yeah, I don't know. It's just, it's an awful environment. You just feel like you're going to drown all the time, and drowning is a real risk. So I think there's a few rules here. One is, don't swim 2 rapids. You know what I mean? If you're going through the rapid that you're going through and you fall out, and there is a chance that the next rapid that you're going to swim through just because you're trying to swim after your boat or do this or that, is just like, get the hell out of the river. You know what I mean? Try not to swim 2 rapids. I think that's a good one. Cool. All right, and then I guess I don't know. I'm about done with this, but I always bring orange juice. So like my river food is like, I'll get a full concentrated orange juice, huge thermos full of ice, and just a hell of a vitamin C sugar load. And I'll be drinking that as long as staying hydrated. And I'm always trying to stay sugared up and hydrated before every rapid, but definitely that sugar kick. Also, let's just say I bring 4 goo packets per day for like if I'm at the surf, you know, I'm maybe eating 2 goo packets. About halfway through, hit a goo packet, and it literally is magic. Everything, your whole brain just gets more precise. So if I'm trying to like do a specific move while surfing, and it's not, you know what I mean, kind of sluggish, not going good, hit a goo packet. Usually those surfs are just like right on. I'm just moving faster and stuff. So I do that before like Locksaw Falls, you know what I mean, because if I know I'm going to flip over, have an exhausting, you know, hang on and then climb back in, at least I have that energy. And so that's real important. Alright, well, what else do we have? Might as well just go through this. Yeah, and then just know your exhaustion levels. R1 boating, I don't think anyone mentions this. It's like weightlifting. It can feel like every paddle stroke is awful. And it's so hard to generate momentum in a river where it might be counterintuitive to generate momentum. Because, I mean, there's so much drag under the boat that if you're trying to actually get the boat where you want it, like a normal kayak, I think you actually have to spend quite a bit more energy. And in a kayak where it might be aerobic, for sure R1, I always feel like it's weightlifting. I even just refer to my Grand Canyon footage. People are just like, why aren't you paddling very much? Well, the boat was loaded with over like 200 pounds of gear, and every paddle stroke literally feels like I'm weightlifting, you know what I mean? So if you were like bench pressing, you can do that 12 times, you know, or whatever, for the weight you got put on it. And then so every rapid is kind of like that. You're like, I got about 20 of these strokes before like I need to take a break, you know what I mean, and then kind of recover. Yeah, so that is an unspoken thing with R1 boating. It definitely is sluggish, and if you're trying to go max power, I don't know, you know what I mean? In a kayak, can you go max power with your kayak to make it feel like it's like a weightlifting? Because I know you can with an R1 stroke. You can just, you know, like the current's on it, and you're just like, I have this whole boat and me in it, and it's like almost not worth it. So I haven't made these tutorials yet, but even just taking like lapping, you know, taking your paddle and just throwing it in just a little bit, and also taking splashy strokes. That's very counterintuitive compared to just like hitting the cement. It's just like, no, like I found that doesn't really work. Like the second my paddle feels like it's in cement, like I ain't going anywhere. It's actually generating a little bit of, you know, splashy water, and maybe that helps with the physics. I don't know, but hell yeah, then I can actually get where I'm going. Cool. So let me get some more juice. Alright, hell yeah. So I've been able to hang on to my boat, which, I mean, just makes sense that if you're flipping and you're hanging onto your boat, you're just, well, two things. One, you're at the surface. So when I've been trying to tag more holes, just because, you know what I mean, if people are up in their game and trying to run, you know, stout rivers that have mandatory holes or holes that you can go into, it's just, if you get flipped in a hole, well, you're gonna do whatever the hole's gonna do to you. Your boat's gonna get stuck, and so it's just kind of fascinating to see what holes can you hang on to, and then have the boat exit. Now I'm sure there's holes plenty big enough where, like, if you hang on, you and the boat ain't exiting. So if you're hanging off the side of the boat, holding on, like, you're still just gonna get surfed, and that would totally suck. But for the big holes that I've been able to run, and kind of, and they've flipped me, I've been able to hold on, and that does two things. One, it keeps me from getting thrown through the hole and out the exit, which I just think has a real risk of like bashing your head, you know, which is different than a kayak. Kayak flips over in a hole. Well, they're attached to their kayak, they're in a sitting position, and their head is only so low. and there has been, definitely some fatalities of kayakers hitting head, in features like that. That does happen. But I think the risk is even higher getting thrown from your boat, even though like kind of rafting is its own thing. And there are plenty of carnage videos of people getting tossed in holes and getting flushed through. But there still is a risk there. Holes are very shallow places. You already have water pouring over a rock in a very shallow, so getting thrown upriver into a hole, that whole area can be shallow. Also, on the downstream side, you have basically eddy water, and you don't have fast flow. So there might be another boulder chalked up, and if there is, it makes that hole even more retentive. And that's always the risk that that's a boogeyman risk of just that I worry about. Getting into a hole and then getting flushed and then impacting other rocks, head, legs, arms, and then also potentially getting sieved into other holes, a hole backed up by sieves. So hanging onto your boat, that's the cool thing about R1 rafting, is that you have this huge inflatable thing, and so you're always at the surface. If you're holding on, you're at the surface. The bummer, though, is it's extremely difficult to hang on, and it's caused me injury already. So in this hand, this bone is kind of messed up now, and so I can't even hit it, very much. If I knock this, I can do that, but any more pressure than that, it's going to get aggravated. And I have full juice on it, and bending is a little bit tough, but that's the injury that I've got hanging onto my boat. This was on the gully, so hit inertia, tried to hold on to my paddle, and then just grab with the other boat. And so I'm supermaning my, and I haven't mentioned this, at all, but hell, that ripped my arm, that ripped the tendon or something. It just really messed up this finger. It's too much force. And so that's where I kind of came up with the idea that if you are in that sort of environment, doesn't have to be class 5, just a huge hole, just the injury causing hole that your boat is stuck in, that you're hanging onto your boat, you probably want to have two hands, ditch the paddle, hopefully you only spent $10-20 for used paddles or something, and then hang on to the boat. And so I do really think that is a good idea. Hell yeah. Alright, hell yeah. So kind of the last thing is, I don't know, I definitely don't swim a lot of rapids. Don't want to, you know what I mean? And it just makes sense that if you are an R1 boater, you should probably go to the gym and do some laps in the pool. You know what I mean? Work on that sort of cardio. I don't. And that's where swimming, just in general, it feels like you're already in a situation where you feel like you're drowning. Usually you paddled, you're already exhausted up to the point that you did flip, because you put in that much work up to that point. Now you're in the water, maybe having to swim a whole rapid, swim after your boat and stuff. All that stuff adds up, and yeah, it's just something. It's not very friendly, and it's not inviting to be like, oh yeah, I just wanna practice swimming rapids. But I do think it's a good idea, and maybe I'll try to do this more at the wave, is kind of end my sessions by at least swimming across the current, because even just swimming across current, the waves are going to hit your face, you're going to choke on that water, you still have to time your breath. It feels awful. For the energy that you're putting in, you're just losing just tons of energy. And for whatever reason, mentally it just feels slow. I mean, obviously it is slow. It's going to be like twice to 3 times worse than a kayak, trying to do moves in a kayak. But with swimming, if you're in like a wetsuit, it can be fairly effective. Swimming with your paddle, hell no, it's going to be awful. But just any sort of swimming, just to know what you're capable of. You know what I mean? Like, can I swim across the river? And then also, yeah, this is good. This is a good way to get into, because anytime that you have a mishap on the river, there is a level of embarrassment, and that also, just like feeling like you're going to drown, feeling like you did something wrong and you shouldn't be in that situation, kind of that embarrassment, like you shouldn't be in that situation. That's something where I think you can coach. Well, I don't know. It's probably just like the drowning. It's just good to know that that's there, and still trying to make good decisions on top of that. So this last swim that I took on the Lochsa, it's Class 1 swim. I swam to my boat was slow. I'm getting thrown downstream. I go to the left. The boat goes to the left, then goes to the right. Swim all the way to the, and then jump back in. Now, how did that work? I got to shore, jumped back in the river, and missed it. You know what I mean? And now I'm going downstream for another couple minutes. And there is another rapid downstream. And I just said in my mind while I'm swimming, you know what I mean? Always like, who cares about all my gear? You know what I mean? We can worry about, I don't care if it goes 20 miles downstream, we just have one of those days. But there is a limit of like, get the hell out of the river, don't swim too rapids, and just have that limit. So you don't get it in over your head. But even one Class 5 rapid might be in over your head. So just keep that in mind for people that are, yeah, I mean, there's definitely a tendency in the R1 community to be like, what can you do with an R1 boat? And I'm more interested in the hydraulics. Like, how big of a hydraulic can you hit? Because you're going to have holes in hydraulics that are on Class 5 rivers that you're going to be mandatory to run, or you're just happenstance probably going to go into those. And so those skills are going to be needed. But there's still plenty of kind of Class 5 runs that get their Class 5 signature from being like, if you swim this would be a horrible idea. You know what I mean? This would be like the worst idea you can come across. Now, are the features actually, like the biggest they could be? Usually not. Usually Class 5 rivers are going to be the most approachable at mid, low mid, and just mid levels. And kind of bonier levels too. Where you just want to, hell yeah, avoid all holes at all costs, because usually they're really steep and nasty. But at the end of the day, are the features, you know what I mean, like going to be just as big as take a Class 3 river that has like big features? I just remember like one of my favorite rivers was the Wenatchee in Leavenworth, Washington. Class 3 river, but when that thing's gushing, it's got plenty of boat-eating features that can flip 14-foot boats that you can still run safely and have fairly safe swims. And it's just like, I don't know. So that's the R1, genre that I'm trying to pursue and take footage of and document. But yeah, then there's the others. It's just like, yeah, the people that are wanting to run Class 5 in an R1, hell yeah. Because then it shows like that you can. Or like what things, like, like first is like, what can the boat run? And obviously, at any point you could tip over and have to swim that rapid. That would suck. Alright, let's see if we got anything else. Alright, I think the last thing is like kayaking. Like, kayakers have a role. R1 rafters, do they really have a flip recovery? Not really. Even do I? I don't think so. You know what I mean? I flip 3 times at least, like every time I go out on the surf wave. But I would say my system is just adequate. You know, it's adequate for class 3, it's adequate for fairly safe class 4 with not back-to-back rapids and not high gradient rivers. But by no means, it would be like my flip recovery, even though I've done it a lot, still feels like a kayaker that can roll in the pool. You know what I mean? Where a kayaker is like, oh yeah, I can just barely roll. You know what I mean? Or I don't know, or just a little bit better. But then, you know, and that analogy works out pretty good. Hey, this kayaker can tip over in a wave train and then wait to the end of the wave train and then flip themselves back up. Cool. And they can just barely do that. Cool. Now that kayaker is wanting to run class 5. That's the R1 equivalent. And it's nothing against R1. It's just like you got a lot going on. You know what I mean? You only have a perimeter line. Let's say you stay with the boat, it's upside down. Now you got to flip it over. The best, you know, currently the best model is grab drain holes and flip it over. The leverage ain't that great. Drain holes aren't very accurate. You know, just throwing a couple fingers in. And still, then sometimes you either have to carry the boat and get flipped to the other side, or palm it and let go and have it flip. Kind of do this and push it forward, and so it flips over. So then you're still getting like detached from your boat again, and then you got to climb in. You know, at no point does that seem dialed in, and even me like climbing back into the boat, that's a difficult task, and especially in current. I have never felt that I could just grab the perimeter line and just 100% get myself back in a rapid, because the current's so tipping, and it's usually fighting you, and so that's always, yeah. So that's what you're up against with R1, is you're kind of like this kayaker that can just barely recover, and that's what you have to, that's your toolbox. And then you want to run like class 4 to class 5 stuff. And so I'm just going to keep making more videos on dialing in that setup. And I got some ideas. But that's it. You know what I mean? Like, how do you run things safely? Pretend like you're going to swim every rapid and be okay with that. And then just know that you can flush drown. And then know, I would say for R1ing, because you don't have a roll like a kayak, you have to know how to treat your body like a raft. So when you're out there doing your things in your raft and getting your raft to go one place or another, just know that your body is a boat. And so when you're swimming, ditch your paddle, swim, you know, do everything just like a boat. Set your ferry angles. Know that if you hit an eddy, you're going to spin. So like try to dive into it. Try to resist that spin. Maybe do a half roll. Know where you can chill it out. You know, and just know that the process is going to take twice as much energy. So yeah. And I would just say don't be complacent. A lot of kayakers, you can be, you know, watch footage of the Gali River. Kayakers just barely paddling. And then they just get whooped. And then they're just wondering why they had a bad day. So I think be as aggressive as you can possibly be, knowing still R1 rafting is like weightlifting. Every stroke is going to be very taxing. But I would rather tax myself during a rapid or prior to a rapid to make sure I'm in right locations than just be in bad locations and not put any effort into it. But hell yeah. But R1 rafting also has, like, you can body shift your way down a river. You could probably just ditch your paddle and just high side your way down, which is also good practice. Alright, to make this video not any longer, we're going to call it. So thanks for joining me. And hell yeah.